After giving a stern warning to NATO, Russia has followed through on its threat. Just hours after Germany and the U.S. announced they would be sending their most advanced tanks to Ukraine, a wave of Russian missiles struck Kiev and cities in the country's south. Ukraine's prime minister confirmed the attacks, saying at least 55 missiles had struck the country, mostly hitting energy facilities and power stations. The barrage followed Wednesday's announcement that the U.S. would be sending its M1 Abrams tanks, while Germany pledged its Leopard 2s. The move reverses nearly a year of hesitancy by NATO over fears the delivery would further antagonize Russia. Ukraine, which had been asking for the tanks since the start of the conflict, is also lobbying for F-16 jets. But German Chancellor Olaf Sholz shut down that option, saying the fighter aircraft were not on the table. So will these latest moves by the West bring Ukraine much-needed help, or will it further provoke Russian attacks? And I'm joined by a special guest. He is a career diplomat and former Ukrainian deputy foreign minister who has had diplomatic postings in Türkiye dating back to 2013. In July 2021, he became Ukraine's top envoy in Ankara. I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Vasily Bodnar, Ukraine's ambassador to Türkiye. Mr. Ambassador, thanks for joining me on Straight Talk. So, the war in Ukraine is nearing its one-year mark. What's the latest on both the diplomatic front and on the ground?
Thank you very much for the invitation. So for me, it's a great honor. The war is going on, war for independence. It's for us, we are fighting for ourselves, we're defending our land, and we have a great successes during the last year of war, but also with the assistance of the international community. So now the world understands how dangerous this war is for the world security, and this assistance which we're receiving from our friends is really necessary for establishing peace. So because now it's the only way to set up the just peace on the ground of territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine.
So how will the latest massive package of weapons announced by the US and NATO allies impact the course of the conflict? So is Ukraine satisfied by it?
It is not the conflict, it's ordinary war, unfortunately. And to stop this war, we need to win this war. Because otherwise, if to think about some other options, it might spread out to the other areas or to other time. So let's not postpone and finish the job here, liberate our territories, it will help for sure, and establish a peace which will be grounded on the law but not on the force. That's the story. But now the other side of the conflict, I mean Russia, they are not loving the international law, they are breaking down every time, everywhere, and they need to be brought to responsibility as well. That's the story.
So after weeks of indecision, the US and Germany have finally approved the delivery of tanks for use in Ukraine. So are they going to change the course of the war? Are they going to be a game changer, you think? Why are they so crucial?
For them, for the very beginning of war, they were very calm and patient about supporting Ukraine. So that was only because of our victories, because of our resilience, and it is our war. We are fighting. Our soldiers are dying there, and our the population is suffering. So it is not anything about the West, it is about us. And they understand that that is the only way to support Ukraine and to bring peace is to support Ukraine for the victory. That's the story. It is a game changer for the battlefield and for the future settlement as the conflict in a whole. So that is the story. But victorious Ukraine bring peace in the world. If vice versa, then the war will be spread out. And we couldn't say that World War II is not knocking the door. Let's look at that.
So would these tanks help you to gain victory in this war?
Yes, we believe so. We believe so, and we believe that it will also open the gates for the other supplies, which is necessary for defending Ukraine.
I've been hearing. So will Ukraine push for Western fourth-generation fighter jets like F-16s after securing supplies of the main battle tanks?
At the beginning of war, we have only a couple of anti-tank rifles. Or anti-tank missiles. Now we're having a lot of Western equipments, and it's also thanks to our resistance, to our possibilities to be strong on the battlefield, and also to present that we are capable to fight a new generation war and present an example for the world, that for justice should be defended. That's why we also will be asking for next generation fighters, we will be asking for other equipment, which is necessary to settle peace. We wouldn't like to be armed country, we would like to set a peace. That's the aim.
So how has the latest corruption scandal linked to the procurement of wartime supplies already impacted your country's position?
We have been fighting with corruption for the whole our independence. So it's a long story, but now I would say that we are the champions in creating the anti-corruption institutions. And now everybody knows about everything. What you have, what assets you have, and how many salaries you get. So it was published every week about your incomes. So now it is the next example of visibility and openness of Ukrainian society and Ukrainian authorities, which are ready to fight the corruption very quickly and to be decisive if someone is charged in doing something wrong, in taking, particularly in wartime, which is really a second front. Because the one front is the battlefield and the second front is the corruption fighting.
So you say corruption is widespread in Ukraine, but could this latest scandal be a hurdle for the transfer of advanced weapons to your country? Like, because you're talking about the fighter jets. I mean,
look,
how's that going to play out?
If to look at the supplies of weapons, how they are used, we have a number of control systems which, let's say, delivering the exact results on the battlefield. So successful results on the battlefield show that the weapons is used correctly. The other side of the story about corruption, I didn't say that it is widespread in Ukraine. I said that we are fighting with corruption like every other country. Yes. And now the visibility of every corrupt act of any public servants became visible for the whole society and the world. So it is the openness. So we reach this period of time to get this corruption scandals open and resolve it quickly. So the decision.
How do you think is the president handling it so far?
Very quickly. So the decision was adopted very quickly that those who are having something to do with that, they are dismissed from the post, and then the relevant authorities will take care about them. Are they guilty or not? Because the only court could decide. So now it's the procedures, and the law enforcement agencies are working very quickly. So we have the whole structure. I would just mention a very simple story that we have preventing corruption agency, fighting corruption agency, special prosecutor, and the court, which is dealing the whole complex story. I don't know if any other country have the same structure of fighting corruption. Maybe someone would like to take an example from us.
All right. So could you talk to us about the U.S. role in bringing Europe to be on the side of Ukraine on the conflict, especially Germany, because your country has been quite critical of its limited assistance, but now it has approved the deployment of those tanks. So what kind of approach we're talking about here?
You know, Americans understood finally that talks with Russians will not bring results. And the supplies of weapons to Ukraine is the option to stop Russian advancement, because we are expecting it, and to change the battlefield for the benefit of Ukraine. That is the necessary, because we are defending our country, we're dealing it with international law, and we are the victim of the aggression. That's the story. From Germany, there was support, but there was not support of the military. They mentioned on the scale which was necessary. So now, when the tank coalition was formed, and the idea was to supply weapons from the West, and really Americans did a great job with sending first. They adopted the first decision to adopt this Abrams, to send the Abrams, and it opened the gate for the Germans as well. So, you know, it's a NATO leading coalition with NATO countries. I wouldn't say NATO organization, but now it brings results in direct supplies to Ukraine of the tanks, which previously they had been thinking about.
But, Mr. Ambassador, tanks will not arrive on the battlefield at least a few months. How will Ukrainian forces counter the stepped-up Russian forces? Because I've been hearing that Russians are beefing up their military presence in Donbas region. So,
in the same manner like we have been doing last year.
Are you preparing for a French offensive?
It's up to the general staff, so they will tell you exact story when the time will come, by deeds, not by words. But in general terms, the tanks will help us first to withstand the future attack, and secondly, we will be able to create a superiority on some frontline sites and create the possibilities for the future victory, or at least to withstand future Russian attacks, which are really endangering Kiev and other types of other cities in Ukraine. So that's the story.
So I understand your priority is to first liberate the occupied lands in Donbas region. So let's say if you liberated them, what comes next?
The next, we should sit at the table and start talking about the peace terms.
How about Crimea?
Crimea should also be liberated.
Because lately some high-level U.S. officials have been suggesting Ukraine to recapture Crimea. Is this an easy task? And let's say you're given the tanks and the fighter jets, will you be able to cut off Russia's supply lines there and in some way isolate Crimea and liberate it maybe?
Yes, sure. It was already done by striking on the bridge from Crimea. It was already done by liberating of Kherson and counteroffensive in the Zaporizhia and Kharkiv region.
Yes.
So we have been successful, and we proved that we could use effectively the weapons, which even Americans or Germans didn't know how to use properly well. That is the story. And if you will look at the practical results of what we have been doing with these weapons, I guess it will be in the books of the history of wars.
Meanwhile, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev has said the defeat of a nuclear power in a conventional war may trigger a nuclear power. What did he want to say, you mean?
It's not true. Let's look
are you
at the
concerned
No.
of a nuclear power because the situation in Zaporizhia is quite
We are not
dangerous,
concerned about Russian position at all. Because what they are talking about, it's only the propaganda tool, it's only the internal consumption, auditory, and it is, so no one in the world now believed in Russian statements. So first of all, there is many examples in the history when the nuclear powers have lost their games, like Americans in Vietnam, Soviet Union in Afghanistan, China with Vietnam. So it was a number of cases where the great powers or the nuclear powers lost. First. Secondly, they are providing an unjust war. That is the story, which is not the defensive war or the war for some, I don't know, it's not the conflict on the battlefield, but it's the war of destruction, which they planned to destruct Ukraine as the country and as a nation. Could the world allow to happen it once again after the World War II or after the wars in Yugoslavia? Or who would care about Syria, for example?
People are afraid that the World War III can break out anytime soon.
World War III could appear at any time, but it doesn't depend on Ukraine. Ukraine is dependent on its soil, and we will continue to do it up until the last Russian soldier will remain on our soil. That's the story, clear, and there is a very good solidarity of Ukrainian society on that.
So some argue that the US is waging a proxy war in Ukraine against Russia. Do you agree?
No. It's hurting Ukrainian society and hurting Ukrainian nation as a whole, which is suffering, which is fighting, and that was not the decision of Americans to defend Ukraine. Moreover, if we will look at the beginning of war, there was a number of proposals for the president to leave the country, for, let's say, military forces that they will not survive, etc. Even if you look at the CNN or other American channels or European channels, they have not been promising that Ukraine will defend itself. No one has believed.
Okay.
Even we have an example when the German minister told to our ambassador, you will not survive 3 days, why should we support you?
So, Mr. Ambassador, what do you make of Turkey's position? On one hand, Turkey supports and defends the territorial unity and political integrity, the territorial integrity and political unity of Ukraine, but on the other hand, it has very deep-seated relations with Russia.
You know, we have a very good relations established before, and we have this strategic partnership based on the trust between two presidents. So it's going on, and the real friend is friend indeed. Friend indeed is friend in need. So we feel it from the very beginning of war with different levels of support, starting from political, Bayraktars, a number of things which we're not speaking about now, but also mediation. And to get results in mediation process, and Turkey is the only country who reached the results. That need to have some contacts with Russia. So, and there was a parallel way of cooperation. So, our strategic partnership and relations with Russia were in parallel tracks.
So, no hard feelings.
You know, we have emotions, and we express them somehow. And Ukrainian society, from time to time, is thinking about why Erdogan is speaking to Putin. When I am answering questions from our media, I'm saying, look, maybe he's discussing the issue about our imprisoned persons to release, or grain corridor, or
Are
humanitarian
you still hopeful about that? Because you said you believe Turkey could arrange another prisoner swap between Ukraine and Russia.
Yes.
Is there a common ground or suitable ground for such a deal again?
Sure, yes.
Why? How come?
We have been discussing this issue during the last visit of our ombudsman. And together, there were a number of bilateral meetings and trilateral, together with participation on Turkey's side. And now the discussions are going on how to do it properly in the practical terms, because we have thousands of people imprisoned by Russians, and dozens of civilians, dozens of thousands of civilians, a lot of wounded soldiers, also soldiers in the ordinary jails.
But why would Russia agree such a deal, especially at a time when all of the Western alliance is backing you?
No, it's not about the Western alliance. It's about mediation of Turkey, which is having good relations with Moscow and strategic partnership with Kiev. And they also have their own in-jail people in Ukraine. I mean, prisoners of war, those who have been working with them, etc. So swaps are one thing. The other thing is also release of those who are wounded, for example. Because
and opening a humanitarian corridor?
Yes, that's the story we are working now on.
So if I'm not mistaken, Ukraine has just recently received 2 Bayraktar TB2 drones from Türkiye. What difference?
Yes, free of charge.
Free of charge?
Yes.
How does it make you feel?
Very good. So we have strategic partnership with Baykar Makina, and with 2 brothers we are working very closely, and we established this partnership before, and the supplies and trainings and everything was very good. We even are planning to construct the factory.
I know.
That's a strategic partnership. But look at the bilaterally
what could derail
useful.
this strategic partnership?
Look, it's mutually beneficial because, for example, part of airplanes from, the UAVs, they are flying on Ukrainian engines.
I know.
That's the story which is bringing two countries together. And we also have a number of future projects which will be suitable and very comfortable for bilateral defense sector and also strengthening ourselves. It's not also, traditionally we have been dependent either on the East or on the West. Let's work together and be independent. That's the story.
So how do you see this conflict evolve in next year, let's say in 1 year or 2 years?
No, hopefully,
is this going to be another frozen conflict, or you truly believe that you're going to emerge victorious?
Our position is very clear. We need to clean up our land and not let frozen conflict to be continued, because we have this frozen conflict for 8 years.
Yeah.
At that time, Russians occupied 10% of our territory. Now they occupy 20%. What they will do in a couple of years if we will fraud it. That's the story. So we should set up a just peace based on territorial integrity of Ukraine and punishment of those who have been conducted criminal acts. We should bring to responsibility political leadership, and we also should take reparations from Russia.
Okay.
Who will pay for the reconstruction? Because it's the other topic for our countries.
Once this is over, I believe.
No, but Turkish companies have a lot of possibilities to work in Ukraine on the reconstruction side.
Yes.
And Russians should pay for that.
All right, Mr. Ambassador, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you very much.